Good morning, friends, and welcome back to the DoSo Knits YouTube channel. Hi friends, and welcome to the DoSo Knits YouTube channel. My name is Kristen. I am the maker behind DoSo Knits, and this is my channel where I just share with you guys how knitting and other fiber crafts have woven into my life. I am based in Denver with my family, and I have a lot of things to share with you today. Been really looking forward to sit down and finally record, and yeah, I hope you're comfy and cozy, and if you're in the northern hemisphere, that spring is peaking to you. Here in Denver, it's like thinking about being spring, but then not really deciding if it's spring, so I'm excited for the more sunshine and warmer days ahead, but I have a good amount of finished objects and works in progress to share with you guys today, so I hope you have something cozy to drink, maybe something to work on, and let's see what we have going on. So the only little bit of admin I have at the beginning to share before we dive into finished objects and works in progress is to make sure that if you have any finished objects for the year of Stash Knit Along that I am hosting, and more information will be linked up in this thing up here, and it's down in the description box. But if you have finished objects for the month of March, make sure you go and submit those in the Google form, because next week's video will be my March stats update. So make sure you go enter in those finished objects that you have if you want to be considered for prizes for March. And yeah, that's really the only little bit of admin I have. The year of Stash Knit Along, if you want more info, like I said, it's linked up above when you do that, and it'll be in the description box down below. I have informational posts on Instagram, and I have a informational video here on YouTube. So a year-long knit along that I'm hosting, and you just have to use your stash. That's basically it. But for more info, go check out those places. Also in the description box down below, I've been including timestamps so you can jump around in this video if you ever need to recheck something or want to rewatch a segment again. Also, I link my Ravelry project pages. All of that is linked down below. So check that out if you need references to anything that I talk about today. So yeah, we can dive right into finished objects, and the most obvious one is what I am wearing today. So this is the Heritage Harbor, which is a pattern that was just released this week by Samantha Guerin. It is a top-down, drop shoulder, DK to worsted weight sweater, and I absolutely love it. I have knit many of Samantha's designs. I think most of my sweaters in my wardrobe are from her right now. And when I saw this call come out, I knew I had to test knit this sweater, mostly because I had literally spent a couple weeks looking for a worsted weight drop shoulder sweater and could not find one on Ravelry that I liked. Most drop shoulders that I find are bottom up. I think there are some that are top down, but in that worsted weight category, I was really struggling to find one that I liked that was simple, and this one fits the bill. I love it so much. So I have good finished object photos, which I'll probably pop on screen, but they're also on my Instagram. I'm not going to stand up because I sit on the floor when I record these. But I love this sweater. I knit it in Heritage by North Bay Fiber, which is what Samantha wrote the pattern in as well. My colors are Chestnut, which is in a winter release, so this color is only available for a limited amount of time. And then my contrast was the color Walnut. Heritage is a heavy DK to light worsted weight yarn. It is a woolen spun yarn, so it's very airy. I actually have a few left over. I have some left over because I bought extras just in case. I didn't know if I was going to stripe. So in case I didn't stripe, I bought enough to do a complete in chestnut. So I have some left over. This is what it looks like in the skein. And so they're non-superwash 2-ply woolen spun yarn, 150 yards in the 50 grams. I loved working with this yarn. It's so light and airy, and especially in like the finished object. This sweater is so lightweight and warm. Like, it's both. I can wear it and I don't feel too hot. The only time I felt too hot wearing this is when I was like running around. I was like doing something very active at work and was like running all over the place, and then I got too hot because I was running, not so much that I was wearing a sweater. But I love it. It has drop shoulders, as you can see from the stripe going this way, and then this. I love it. And it has this nice little texture between each stripe. So when you're knitting it, you have like 4 rounds of a main color and then 4 rounds of texture stitch, 4 rounds of stockinette, and then 4 rounds of contrast color, and it just keeps repeating. And so you just want to keep knitting until you get to like that next section, or at least you can be like, well, I'll just knit until I finish this section. And I know for me specifically, having those little like milestones when I'm knitting is really helpful, because sometimes I can get pretty distracted, you know, pick up your phone, scroll on Instagram, go to Ravelry and look at other patterns. I tend to do all of those things. So having these little like, oh, I'll just keep going until I get to the next section is really helpful, and I love it. I knit the size 6 for a 52-inch bust, supposedly. So my gauge was slightly off. I did not do as big of a gauge swatch as I probably should have. I did a decently sized swatch. I think it was about a 6x6, maybe 7x7. But from my gauge swatch to my finished garment, I definitely loosened up. And so this ended up being closer to a 56-inch bust versus the 52. But since it's so oversized, I feel like it's fine. I don't mind it that much. It definitely gives me like bougie sweatshirt, as Kaci would say for her knit along. Bougie sweatshirt vibes. Bougie sweater. Bougie sweatshirt. It's amazing. I can just throw it on. I just have to wear like not super flowy pants, because then I just look like super flowy on top and super flowy on the bottom. So some of the modifications that I made in my version, I made my body length 2 inches shorter than what's called for in the pattern, and mostly because I wanted it slightly cropped, but also I am short-waisted, so just like my proportion of torso to like the rest of my body is shorter. So I'm finding, I think I will probably have to shorten most sweaters to make them hit me in a place that I like. So it is 2 inches shorter. And then the only other modification that I made is I did a sewn bind off instead of the tubular bind off. Because for a tubular bind off, you have to rearrange 2x2 ribbing into a 1x1 ribbing and then do the sewn or the tubular bind off. And I don't like how that looks. I don't like how changing from the 2x2 to the 1x1 looks. I feel like it kind of takes away the point of a tubular bind off because it's not as seamless. So I just did a sewn bind off on the bottom hem and my cuff, and it just makes this really nice like pearl kind of, just a nice seamless kind of like professional looking bind off. I really like it. I did that on the cuffs and I did it on the bottom ribbing. So yeah, that's it. So just like the 2x2 just goes into the bind off. And a sewn bind off is so easy. You just go in 2 stitches purlwise, out the first knitwise, and pop it off your needle. It's really easy. You don't have to like, with a tubular bind off, I know I have to like really focus of like, did I just go in knitwise or purlwise? And this one's really easy. In 2 purlwise, out 1 knitwise. Love it. There are no decreases on the sleeve until you get to the cuff. And I did more decreases for my cuff just because I wanted it slightly closer here. Part of me wishes I'd probably just done like a tight cuff, but I'm trying to embrace the bigger cuff. It definitely, like, I feel like I do this all the time where I slip my hands into my cuff. Yeah, and you can kind of see like on the collar and on the ribbing a slight color change, and that was, I had one skein of this Heritage that was just slightly darker. And they're hand-dyed yarns, and I think I had mentioned in the last episode that I had started it for a sleeve, and you could really tell the difference in the color change there. But I just used that skein in the collar and the cuffs, and like it's slightly darker, but not so much that you would notice. I notice because I know it's there, but like wearing it around and people telling me that my sweater looks really nice, no one has been like, oh, your collar is slightly different colored. So I think it looks good, and I like that I was able to use all of my yarn. I used my 2 skeins of the contrast color. I didn't use all the contrast color, but for my main color, I used 7 skeins total. Let me check. Yes, I used 7 skeins of my main color, and like to the like last bit. I think I had just like a couple inches left of it after doing my sewn bind off on the bottom ribbing. So that worked out really well. And these are 50 gram skeins, so 7 would be 350 grams total, and it was 1,050 yards of the main color, and I used 88 grams of my contrast color, so 264 yards. So I really love it. I love it so much. It's probably my best fitting sweater, and I think I say that about most of my new sweaters that I finish. I really like that this has a like pretty close crew neck folded over neckline. I think it looks really nice, and I like that it's kind of up here instead of like way out here, because I have really narrow shoulders, so having a neckline that's like closer to my neck I prefer. Yeah, that's this sweater. It's out this week. Samantha usually runs with a coupon code the first weekend of a release, so make sure you check it out. And North Bay Fibers also put together kits, so if you buy a kit from them using the Heritage, which I love this yarn and honestly am slightly tempted to get more, if you buy a kit from them for this sweater, you get this pattern for free. So yeah, check those out if you want. I love this sweater. It's just like the perfect sweatshirt, and I just have a tank top on under this, and that's it. It's next to my sleeves and on my décolletage here, and it's not itchy at all. I love this yarn, and it's Targhee Polypay. Love it so much. And yeah, that's a sweater, and we'll move on to the next thing. So the next finished object that I have, I finished it before I finished this sweater, but these are my Fire Pit Mitts by Taylor Earl of the Wool Needles Hands podcast and the Dyer Behind Fiber for the People. And I finished these for my Desert Vista Dye Works knit along entry for March. This is what they look like. So last time I had finished the first mitt, and now I have finished the second. So my first one, my color changes were pretty uniform. Like what I did is I used Desert Vista Dye Works' Viso, which is a fingering weight base. I split it into 250 gram cakes and found where the color changed at the same time, and then held the yarn double to get closer to a DK weight. This pattern's written for a worsted weight, but I just went down a needle size to get a nice gauge, but then went up a size in the pattern to get a size that would fit me. So I used a US 5 instead of a US 7 and a size medium in hopes of getting a size small. So on this mitt, my color changes look really nice and pretty uniform, not too much marling. Looks pretty good. This colorway is also called Wind in the Willows from Desert Vista Dye Works. And then on my second one, the beginning was pretty uniform, and then I quickly transitioned to more of a marled effect throughout, but overall I think it's fine. I did make a couple modifications. I did a 9-inch arm instead of what's called for in the pattern, and then for the thumb, I didn't knit a thumb. I just bound off the stitches and called it good. And since this has such wide open sleeves, I can show you what these look like. So with the 9 inches, they go up all the way to my elbow, and this is what it looks like. So they cover most of my hand all the way up to my pinky, and then that's what it looks like without a thumb. So I still did the gusset, but then just didn't pick up and knit for the thumb. And yeah, I've had these kind of sitting waiting to podcast, so I haven't really used them yet, but I am definitely feeling, we've been not running the heating during the day, so sometimes the house in my office in here gets a little cold while I'm working, so I think having these to like type will be good. And I can just pull these down. So they look like little fingy mitts, but they go all the way up to my elbow. And yeah, I still don't know if I'm necessarily a super stripy, like fingerless mitt kind of person, but as like the weather is changing right now and you don't want to like really layer up, when I go and walk Sherlock, who's my dog, like I don't really want to layer up in too many layers, because I've found I start getting kind of warm now as it's warming up. So having something like this, which is more of like a transitional layer, I think will be good. Yeah, happy they're done. I'm glad I went and did mitts this time instead of socks. I just am not in a sock mood right now, which is crazy. I think this might be one of the first podcasts on DoSoKnits where I don't have a pair of socks to show you. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm glad I held these double. I was able to knit these up very, very quickly. And since I had this deadline and I had another secret test knit, which I will show you once I'm allowed to show you, I had that to finish as well this month. So I was feeling the pressure from those. So having something quick this month was definitely something I needed. And yeah, those are the only finished objects that I have to show you for this week. Like I said, I did have one other secret test knit that I finished, but I can't show you that. So yeah, we can move into what I've been working on since the last episode. So my first whip is actually not a whip anymore. It is something that has been frogged, but I posted it on my Instagram earlier in the week and I said I would talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. And I also feel like it's important to talk about like the things that I kind of abandoned. So I was working on the Forager sweater, which is a sweater by Melody Hoffman. It is a worsted weight and mohair held together sweater. Classic raglan shaping. There's like a cropped and a full length version. And I was really enjoying working on it. I had mentioned a few episodes back that I had added bust darts to it and I was pretty excited about those, and had worked on the body and then changed how the sleeves were decreasing, and I did not rip it out because of how I did that change. I thought the taper of the decreases that I was doing worked really well. However, that raglan on that sweater, and this is just because I haven't knit many raglans, I'm still figuring out sweater fits. I still feel like I'm so new to sweater knitting. A lot of the ones that I've done, like there's a few from Samantha that I've done that are round yokes, and I feel like I've kind of figured out kind of a round yoke fit. This is a drop shoulder, so pretty easy to modify. I was able to kind of figure it out. Basically with a drop shoulder, as long as you're not too small, it's probably going to fit. But the raglan, it was probably 2 to 3 inches deeper than my armpit. And like on a drop shoulder, this is fine because when you put your arm down, this kind of like tucks in. But on the raglan, I remember like as a kid and when I was younger, when I had things that like did not fit in my armpit, and then like you put your arms down and you could like feel your armpit and your arm touch under like a long sleeve shirt. I hated that feeling, and I just could tell this sweater was probably going to do that, because if I'm gonna knit a like more fitted kind of like nice sweater, I want it like up in my armpit, and that was not what I was getting from the size that I picked. Now thinking back, and as like I've now done slightly of a raglan, and even though I had to restart it, I know I could have just split my raglan and sleeves sooner. Once I had enough like depth, I could have just split out those sleeves, and if I needed to do more increases on the front, I could have done that. Yeah. The other thing that really bothered me is because the raglan was so deep, when I put my arm down, there was just like a giant flap of fabric, and I'm doing it on this arm because this was the sleeve that I had knit. There was literally this giant flap of fabric that just kind of like sat out and like bulged, and I like stared at it. And I had this like moment of like, do I like this? Because it didn't necessarily look bad. The sweater didn't necessarily look bad. It looked like an oversized, comfortable, oversized raglan. However, that's not what I went into the knit wanting. So I think once I tried that sleeve on and saw how it was fitting, and just like, it just felt like it didn't fit. And even though like overall it probably looked fine, it was just more oversized, but it wasn't what I had envisioned. And so I frogged the sweater. I frogged it completely. Just because to like redo that, I would have to redo all of the raglan and like re-figure it all out. And honestly, I just haven't been picking that sweater up. I loved the combination. I was using Cascade and Knit Picks Aloft held together, and I made this beautiful jewel toned combination between the two. But especially as we're moving into spring, a worsted weight with mohair sweater is not what I want to work on. And it wasn't fitting the way I was wanting it to, so it probably would have just sat. And I'd rather honestly restart a sweater than have it sit right now. So that is what I did. I spent some time 2 days ago ripping it out, which frogging takes a little longer than you would expect. The mohair actually ripped out fine. I didn't have really that many issues. The only issues I had was when I would like, so what I do is I'd rip it out, and as I'm ripping it out, I would pull the worsted and the mohair apart. And on this side of me, I would have the worsted, and this side of me, I'd have the mohair. I'd rip out a portion, and then I'd grab my ball, wind it up a little bit, grab the ball, wind it up, and then just keep repeating. The only times I had issues with the mohair is when I was like, I'm gonna rip a little bit extra, and just I'm like ripping and ripping and ripping, and then like I go to like wind up the mohair, and I've ripped so much out that the mohair like on itself is like, hello, I'm gonna tangle. So I had to do it like slow. Rip out a little bit, wind it up, and just keep going. But overall it was fine. I didn't mind it. And then yesterday I spent a little bit of time for the mohair. It didn't have that much memory in it, so I just recaked those up because they came in the donuts from Knit Picks, so I couldn't like re-donut them. And by donut I mean like they look like this, but mohair. And so I couldn't re-donut them, so I recaked them. And then for the Cascade, it definitely had like a nice crimp to it. So I spent time re-putting it on my Swift. So I just opened the Swift like I would normally, and then just kind of spin it to get a nice big loop. Did some ties, and then soaked the 4 skeins, and they're hanging downstairs to dry. And they look like they've removed most of the memory. There might be a little bit of memory left, but not too bad. So I'll reuse the yarn 100%. I originally bought that mohair to go with this color of Knit Picks palette anyway. So maybe I'll do a sweater with this, or, you know, that's one thing I really like about knitting, is that even though I was that far into a sweater, because I was probably a few inches shy on the body to start the ribbing, and I was pretty close to finishing that sleeve. But I like with knitting is that I can try it on, look at it, and be like, this is not what I want, and I can rip it out and I can reuse the yarn. When I sew, like, that is not the case. If you cut out the wrong size of fabric, and like if you cut a size that's too small, you're stuck with it. can't really repurpose the fabric. Or if you like start sewing a project and you're like, oh, this fabric really does not lend to this pattern, you've already cut it out and you like cannot repurpose. At least I cannot, not with my amateur sewing skills. So anyway, I just want to say, like, I frogged my Forager. Does not mean I won't knit another Forager. I really enjoyed the pattern. I just, yarn combo and sizing wasn't right for me and wasn't right for this time in my life. So I ripped it out and I feel completely fine about that. I did, sometimes when I frog a project, I will delete the project page because I don't feel like there's any beneficial or useful information on there. But for the Forager, I had so much information about how I added bust darts and the math that I used that I left it. I left that Ravelry project page, changed the status to frogged, and so that way I have it to re-access in case I ever do want to reknit the Forager, or if I need to like redo the math for another sweater, it's there. So that is still accessible if you want to look at it too. But now we can move into what I've actually been working on. I'm not actually going to tease you now. This is what I've been working on since the last podcast. We're just going to stick with sweaters for the beginning. So I've been working on my Easy V by Caitlin Hunter now that I have finished my Heritage Harbor. And I'm really excited about this sweater. Let me show you where I am at. Ta-da! So you can tell I'm having a brown year. I'm really loving the browns and I really love how this color work is looking. I love it so much. It's a little primary, but it's really, I think, just because the yellow is bright, but I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm knitting this with a natural merino yarn that I got in Germany, which is the dark brown. And then the color work is Spin Cycle Dream State, which is their worsted weight color changing yarn. The colors that I am using are Rusted Rainbow, the blue is Shades of Earth, and then the yellow is Salty Dog. I've talked about these colors in the past, so if you'd like a little more information, that's back there. I am knitting I am knitting the size 5, 52 inch, which is the same that I was doing as this. I'm using a US 7 for the body. I use the same size needles for my color work. I'm using a US 6. I originally used a US 7 for the color work and then it was too loose. So I used the same size needle for my color work as I am for my body. And I'm about 7 inches into the body after the sleeve divide. I have about 2 more inches of body to go and then I will do my ribbing. And I think that's the length that's called for in the pattern. I tried it on this morning with my jeans and I want this just a little bit longer than like this one because I want this to be like a nice sweatshirt vibe. I'm loving knitting on this. The thing with this sweater is like you do the really interesting V-neck and now it's actually starting to look like a V-neck. In some episodes it did not. I did go down a needle size for the ribbing to try to cinch it in just a little bit because I do have narrow shoulders. So I went down a size for the ribbing and I feel like it's perfect. And then you do the color work, which in itself is quite addictive, really amazing. And then basically you finish the color work, knit a round or two in your main color, and then split for sleeves. And so then you have less stitches, and then the body just feels like it flies. Also, now that it's stuck in it in the round, I can do it super easy while watching TV or in meetings. I am loving it. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. I did omit the short rows because they happen in the back after the color work, and a lot of people on the Ravelry project pages said like it kind of made a weird bulge, and the point of short rows in the back is to like raise the back up, but I feel like with it being this really interesting V-neck, I don't necessarily need the back higher, and with it being so low, I don't actually know if it would actually raise the back neck. Because if people are seeing a bulge down low, I don't know if it's actually raising it. Take all of this with a grain of salt, as I am not a knitwear designer. This is just my opinions, and I'm still learning how to knit sweaters that fit my body. So we're just trying things out. I love it. I love it so much. So I think this weekend I'll definitely be able to finish the body. I did about 1 inch of the 2 inches that I need before the ribbing this morning. And then I'll start on the sleeves. There is color work on the end of the sleeves, and I do think I will be doing that because I just have a lot of spin cycle left in my bag. Yeah, this is it. I love my Easy V. So I'll give you a nice close-up of, what do you think of that color work? Isn't it gorgeous? I had to do a little bit of color management just because some parts of Shades of Earth and Rusted Rainbow were very similarly red marled. So I did do a little bit of color management just to make sure that you could see distinctly 3 different colors, because there were points where it just did not look like that. On the sleeves, I'm a little less concerned. So yeah, that is my Easy V. I'm really surprised at how quickly like body knitting is going. Like especially with this one, I felt like I split for the sleeves and then the body went really quick. And like the same thing with my Easy V. And maybe it's because I'm short-waisted, but I'm also knitting the Easy V to the recommended length that Caitlin Hunter recommended in the pattern. So maybe I just had this notion that sweaters took a lot longer than they do. And I'm becoming more of a sweater knitter this year, because last year I was definitely like a sock knitter. So we'll see. I am swatching for another sweater, and that is what I'll show you next. So I've been watching a ton of the Crayabea podcast. I had not watched Rebecca before like this week, and maybe I've been under a rock slightly. Sometimes like I have so many knitting podcasts that sometimes adding a new one, even though there's suggestions of like, these are all really great, you know, sometimes it's hard to like, you want to make sure you have the time when you find a new knitting podcaster, that when you find them, you can like sink your teeth in when you really like them. Because that's what's happened is I've watched probably, I don't know, 10 of her episodes, starting with the newest and working backwards. But I love her. I wish, I feel like we would be friends. Also, it really makes me miss living in Europe. But Rebecca has talked a lot about the Lento sweater, which is by Jonna Hietala. Sorry, I tried. I'm swatching for it, and the reason I'm doing it is because Rebecca has spent a lot of time, and she's in a few of them, and she actually just finished hosting a Lento knit along, which obviously I've missed, but it's a fingering weight and mohair sweater, but it's knit at a super open gauge. It's knit at 15 stitches over 4 inches, which is crazy because I looked at a bulky cardigan the other day and it had the same gauge as this. I've started swatching because Shane and I are going on a trip to Albuquerque at the beginning of April, going in a few weeks, week and a half or so. I want to finish my Easy V because I want it for that trip as like an evening sweatshirt when it's cooler at night. And then I want this Lento to be my like vacation project. We have a 7-hour drive to get there. And so I want not too many projects, but I want some that I can like hold my attention, but still easy, like stockinette in the round. So if we go out and do something, it's easy to pick up and put down. So this is my swatch. I'm doing a huge swatch. This is probably about a 10-inch width, and I'm gonna do a 10 by 10. And this is what it looks like. And the only thing I'm concerned with, and on the camera, maybe I'm less concerned, is if it's too close to my skin tone. So let me know. Does this look too close? I feel like it does look like a nice grayish brown, so it won't look too similar, as I am more of a pinky kind of warm tone versus a cool tone, I think. So I think this will look okay. this is what my swatch is looking like. And if you can see these like really cute little blips, I've had this yarn in my stash for a while. This is, let me grab the full skein. So this is by Nerdstring, who is now Salty Blonde Fibers, but this has the old Nerdstring logo. And this is the color Seaside. So you can see all these like cute little speckles. I fell in love with this color. It just looks like beautiful beachy sand with little like sea glass speckles throughout. So I've had 3 skeins of this in my stash for a while. Thought I would do like a t-shirt or just something. So I had 3 just in case. And then yesterday I picked up this Ariel by Barocco in the color Driftwood. And so the core of this is like kind of like a nice brown, and then the halo is more of like a grayish. And I feel like it's working up really well together. So it's like definitely more airy, kind of see-through, but when Rebecca talked about this sweater, she mentioned it's like a really good transitional like spring and autumn kind of raglan sweater, and I'll probably do like 3/4 length sleeves. So I'm swatching for this. I started the swatch last night, and yeah, we'll see if I hit gauge. And if not, I really do like this fabric, so if not, I'll probably just do some math to kind of keep this. I'm trying to do a bigger swatch to alleviate the growing, because I think what happens is when I swatch, I'm trying to knit a little bit tighter because I knit loosely, and then once I start a sweater, I like relax back into my natural like loose knitting. So with a bigger swatch, I'm hoping to kind of imitate that a little bit more. This swatch I cannot do in one sitting, so I feel like that will help replicate like picking up a project, putting it down, picking it up. Like you can't work on a sweater in like one continuous sitting. So I'm trying to get that same kind of relaxed vibe with this swatch. And we'll see. And I'm doing extremely long loops in the back because I'm doing a swatch on the round, but I also may be playing slightly yarn chicken with this, so I don't want to have to cut any of those strands. So I'm keeping them exceptionally loose so that when I go to block this, it can lay flat without any of these getting pulled. And yeah, I've been taking a lot of tips from Patty Leon's Knitting Bag of Tricks book. This is the best knitting reference book that I have found. I love it so much. I highly recommend that book. I meant to bring it in here to show you, and I did not, but there's like a whole section about gauge and how, if you like your gauge, how to do the math to change it to do a different sweater, everything. There's so much gold in there, and it's written so well. So really love that book. And one of the suggestions is to do bigger swatches, which makes sense. And so I'm trying to be a good swatcher. And even with this, I did a decently sized swatch, but I've learned for myself, I have to do a bigger swatch. The bigger the better for me, because I relax when I do a big project, and when I swatch, I'm not relaxed. So I'm trying to relax and swatch. So yeah, it's really not a work in progress yet, but it kind of is. It's a swatch, and that's where we're at with that one. The next project is in this new Jezebel Bee bag that I got. She had a shop update, and so I got the large bag. I used to have a small one, but the small one was too small for me. And I need more sweater size bags. So this is kind of what it looks like when it's on. And I really like how it feels. This one is much more my colors than the old one that I had. So in here is a new cast on that you have not seen, on the podcast at least. You might have seen it on Instagram, but it is my Sophie Shawl by Petite Knit. Now I am using Fancy Tiger Crafts Heirloom Romney in this project in the color Nettle. It's 100% US Romney wool, and it's a worsted weight. And I've got a decent amount of progress on this project. this is what it looks like. Ta-da! It's just a garter stitch shawl with an I-cord edge. Worsted weight, so every time this marker is where I was when I picked it up last night. Worked maybe an hour on it. And so it grows pretty quickly, which is pretty fun and exciting to see, but I have a lot of increases left to do. So for this pattern, I was basing it off of the large size, and so I bought 3 skeins of this heirloom. Now, part of me is thinking, because in the pattern, she recommends how to, if you're working on limited yarn, you basically knit halfway of your yarn for your increases, and then you knit the other half as decreases. So part of me is thinking I might just work up this whole skein, see how far it gets me, and then maybe I'll start my decreases. I don't know. It's definitely a little, it's got a halo, it's fuzzy, it does split a little bit. It has a really nice hand and tooth to it. It's just not the favorite thing I've worked with. Compared to this, I loved working with the Targhee. So maybe Air or Romney is not my favorite sheep breed to work with, but when I've held this up to my neck, I can tell it's going to be really, really nice to wear. It's really warm, not super soft, but not scratchy. I can definitely put this here and don't feel like I need to itch my neck, and I feel like it's giving me a lot of warmth. Imagine a sheep sitting here. It's really nice, and I like these little variations throughout. Yeah, Fancy Tiger is hosting a knit along using this yarn, so that is why I am working on this project. And I'm excited to have this kind of, she says it's a shawl, it's kind of a scarf, but I think this will be really nice to have to just throw on. It doesn't look like it'll be too big, and yeah, I've been enjoying working the pattern. The only thing is, with this pattern, you increase every so many rounds, and the increase is really seamless into this I-cord. So seamless that I can't read where my last increase was. Because you do a knit front back, and this is in garter stitch, so the knit goes into the I-cord, and the back of the front back makes a purl bump, which blends into the garter. Really hard to see. So I'm trying to figure it out with a stitch marker. Still haven't completely figured it out yet. So I have to use a row counter with this pattern. So I use the app Row Counter, which is similar to Knit Companion, but for Android, I like it a lot more than I did for Knit Companion, because for Knit Companion with Android, you have to link it to, you have to sync it to Dropbox, and then you can pull it up on your phone. So say you use 2 different devices. I do. I use my tablet and my phone. With Knit Companion, I have to manually sync it, then pull it over to the other device. With Row Counter, I don't have to do that. It syncs them automatically. So I prefer this app. Also, you can't draw on Knit Companion with an Android, doodles or physical pencil writing. With Row Counter, you can. So, I prefer Row Counter, but I have my row. It also has row counters in addition to importing your Ravelry patterns, and it links to your Ravelry library really easily. You can import the patterns super easily. And so I have my row counters set up. Let me see if I can show you. So I have my Sophie Shawl, and this is just the cover page, so I can show it to you. So I have my global counter. Whoops. The global counter is your total row counter, and then down here I have my which row I'm on, and it's nice because you can set it up so I have it pull up this reminder to increase, and then as you increase, it won't pop up on that row. You can set up you could have multiple counters. So if you had to like increase every 6 rounds, but then like do something else every 4, you can have 2 separate small counters linked to the global counter. And as you increase the global counter, it can do those other 2 independently. So you can be like, okay, I had to do this every 6 rows, but this every 4. So I really like it. But I have to use that row counter in this pattern. Like I cannot read it. So I always have to have my row counter. But it will be okay. And I've put it in this bag. And I love that this pattern is worsted weight because it'll go very, very quickly. And I'm hoping once I finish this shawl that I'm probably going to start my Vertices Unite. So I really want to start a Vertices Unite, but that's like my when you finish this, you can reward yourself with a new cast on. So that is what I'm doing. That is that shawl. And I feel like this will be a nice one to have also if I don't finish it before our trip. It'll be one that I take with us because it'll be good for like the drive down because I can have my row counter with me and just kind of increase as we ride along for 7 hours. And then hopefully my Lento can be more of a like out and about, don't have to think, don't need a row counter. And yeah. And then we're on to my final work in progress. This is in a bag by Stolen Minutes. This is the medium size. It's really beautiful and has watercolor flowers on it. But in here is another pattern by Petite Knit, and it is the Oslo Hat. And I will blame this cast on, or the inspiration for this cast on comes from Hygge Canyon. So Kim has knit these before, the Oslo hats, and I've been watching a good amount of Kim and Jonna. I also found their podcast and watched a ton of their I've watched all of their episodes, and they've knit Oslo hats. And right now in Hygge Canyon's Patreon, she's hosting a couple of knit-alongs, and this will fit for those knit-alongs. So I've cast on an Oslo hat. Since I finished my fire pit mitts, I needed something easy, small, and portable, and this just felt right. So this is what it looks like. So now the Oslo hat is a DK weight pattern, but you need more than 100 grams. So does that make sense? So I'm holding 2 fingering weights together, but you can't make an Oslo hat with just 1 skein of fingering weight. You need 2. So I'm holding 2 different fingering weights together. Now this pink is not necessarily my color, but maybe it is. Is it? What do you think? If it's not my color in the end, I'll end up gifting it. But the 2 colors that I'm holding together, these are both from Homespun House, and it's the non-superwash fingering. This is the color Cheers. And this was the main color skein from my Advent last year. And this is the color Apple Crisp, which is a really pretty mauvey, pinky. And I'm holding them together to get this. So I've done a good amount of knitting. It's really making a really nice plush fabric. But I have a couple inches to go before you fold it over to do the folded brim. And then a couple inches before you do the decreases. It's basically stockinette in the round, but since it's like fingering held double, it's faster because it's closer to a DK. Compared to like a muscle burrow, which is just fingering weight. I mean, you can do a DK weight one, but I've done fingering weight ones in the past, so that's what my brain automatically goes to, and I just don't want to do one of those right now. I think fingering weight projects just are not in my brain and not what I want right now. Like I don't want to do fingering weight socks. I don't want to do fingering weight hats. Give me DK sweaters and worsted weight shawls, and like sure the Lento is going to be a fingering weight and mohair, but it's knit at like a ginormous gauge. So I don't know. I just need some fast knits, I think, right now. So this pattern fit the bill. I took it when we were out dinner last night, worked on it for a few rounds. It's nice because I can really just pick it up and put it down. I don't even have a beginning of round marker in here because, you know, like it doesn't matter because you just knit in a helical. So I'm close to the fold. I think I have a couple inches before I can fold my brim over. And yeah, that's my Oslo hat. 2 skeins of finger weight that I'm holding double to try out this pattern for the first time. Everyone just rants and raves about that pattern, so I wanted to try it finally. And yeah, that is all of the knitting that I have to show you. My camera battery is dying, as I've talked for a good long time today, and my camera didn't die, so that's exciting. Well, it didn't die, but it didn't overheat. Sometimes it overheats and then I feel like I'm frantic, but my room is cooling down because I turned the heat off in here. For some life stuff, I wanted to do a little update. If you saw on my Instagram, Shane and I got a new fridge, which ended up being an ordeal. Basically, they came to deliver the fridge. The fridge is a little snug in the doorway that it has to go through because the doorway is not that big. A lot of the doorways in this house are not super large. I think it's because the house was built a while ago. But basically, we just had some struggles. The dishwasher handle stuck out too far for the fridge to fit. And so the movers left the fridge in the living room because we were going to call and have them come back. They then did not come back, so then we had to call again, and they were going to come the next day. So that would be 3 days of the fridge in our living room. So then Shane and I went and got moving straps, removed the handle from the dishwasher because it was not that hard. Shane was able to get it off when the initial movers left before they even pulled away. So we went and bought moving straps. We moved that fridge into the kitchen ourselves, and it fits in the spot, but we can't open the right door. We have a French door on top with the drawer at the bottom. And people tell you to make sure you measure the width, the depth, and the height. We did that, and it fits all those places. However, people do not tell you to measure how much the hinge on the door adds to the width of your fridge when you open the door. Older fridges, I think, kind of open more in line. So when you open it, it doesn't extrude anymore. But the fridge we had picked, when you open the hinge, it needs like another 4 inches of space to be able to open fully. So the right side door, because it's right next to the wall, opens maybe 30% of the way, maybe halfway. I have a picture, which I'm sure I've popped up, but like it does not open. So had to go back, picked a new fridge, picked a smaller fridge. Luckily, we are able to use this fridge until the new one is delivered, that was like our biggest concern, was like, are they gonna like take this fridge away and like not let us use it? But once a fridge is in your house, it's considered open box, at least in Lowe's eyes. So we're allowed to use it until our new fridge arrives, our new smaller fridge. So that's coming next week before we go on our trip. And luckily this fridge is usable. We just can't open that right door all the way. And honestly, once we got that fridge in, it's huge. It's too big for 2 of us. So we're totally fine getting a smaller fridge. Yeah, because this fridge, we put all of our groceries in it finally because we had spent days like in bags because we didn't want to unpack if like the fridge was in the living room and they were supposed to come back, so we didn't want to unpack the fridge. And then we didn't know if we could unpack, we didn't want to like get the fridge dirty if they were like, well, you can't use the fridge. But luckily we can. So we finally unpacked all of our food, and like there's just so much free space for the amount of food that we have. So we're getting a 33-inch fridge instead of a 36-inch fridge, and I'm excited for that to come. This whole fridge ordeal is one of those, it definitely feels like people have said like owning a home, like something will always go wrong, even when you think it'll all go right. And I feel like this fridge fiasco has been like the hashtag welcome to home ownership malarkey that everyone has said would happen. Because we got new blinds and like that went fine. We only had like a small hitch with that, but otherwise it was just like screwing screws in and measuring, and like that went fine. But this fridge thing did not go as well. It was, and I'm looking at it from a slightly more like there was a lot that happened in this fiasco, like things from since they left the fridge in the living room, the water line was left open, so all of our water in the house was turned off. So we had to go find a cap for a water line, which apparently is not a normal pipe size. So we had to find like a very specific size to stop the end of the water line. If you ever need to do that, you get like a ice valve that turns on and off that'll fit your water line. Because normal end caps will not fit. It's not 1/4 of an inch and it's not 3/8 of an inch. It's like 16ths in between. It just like does not fit. And yeah, just a lot happened with that, but glad that was done. I took all day Sunday to just like do nothing because Saturday ended up being a very stressful day. Honestly, getting the moving straps and moving it into the kitchen ourselves was the easiest part of getting the fridge into that spot. Which is a lot because that fridge weighs 360 pounds. So I felt very good about myself that I was able to lift half of that with Shane. But yeah, other than that, we're really excited about our trip to Albuquerque. We're going to be there for a good amount of days. Sherlock is not coming with us. He is going to a dog sitter. But if you've ever been to Albuquerque and have any suggestions, let me know down below. We're really going for food, for beer. We're going to do some hikes maybe. We're not super touristy people, but we just like want to get out of Denver. We want to go on a trip somewhere. And yeah, I'm in it for the food. I'm always in it for the food. It does look like there's a pretty decent yarn store in Albuquerque, so we're gonna stop by that for sure. There also, I think we had to drive through Santa Fe to get there, so I'm gonna look and see if there's any stores in Santa Fe. And yeah, if you have any suggestions for any bit of that area, this is our first time going to this area of the country. We've never been to New Mexico or Albuquerque or anywhere like that, so we're excited. Let us know if you have any suggestions, because I'm all about suggestions. And yeah, other than that, that is all I have. Thank you so much for watching. Please do all those YouTube things of liking, commenting, and subscribing. Also, if you'd like to join my Patreon, that'll be linked on the end screen as well. Yeah, that's all the knitting I have. I was chatty today. I hope you got some knitting done, and I hope you've put a little bit of love into every stitch of your making, and I will see you guys next week for my March stats updates along with the community stats for the year of Stash KAL. And until then, happy knitting.